You look at something like prostitution. It doesn't require any mental effort. You could literally do the job while using 0% of your brain's CPU, and the same goes for physical effort. You could literally do the job without exhausting any physical effort.
John, be honest with me. Do you know what sex is?
And I know this isn't all men who watch porn, but a lot of men watch porn as an alternative to being sexually active with real women. We've seen the proportion of young men that are not having sex at a record high. And, you know, ideally, we wouldn't be watching porn or having sex outside the context of marriage, but for now, we have to be pragmatic, one at a time. So
this is the introduction to John Doyle's video, Stop Watching Porn, from his series, Heck Off, Commie. Now let me show you what he says towards the end of that video.
Young people who have been exposed to pornography are more likely to have multiple lifetime sexual partners, more likely to have had more than one sexual partner in the last 3 months.
I don't think it needs stating, but these two beliefs he's listed here aren't compatible at the same time. How can porn simultaneously make someone so antisocial that they never have sex, but it also makes them more likely to have more sex with more people? The only way this makes sense is if one or both of the sources for why John believes this are wrong, or John's misinterpreted both of these sources so much that he's somehow arrived at this contradictory conclusion. Well, spoiler, it's the latter. Doyle's graph here comes from a Washington Post article called "The Share of Americans Not Having Sex Has Reached a Record High," which describes how young men and women are having less sex. Not just young men, like Doyle's implying with the graph. Primarily, the article cites economic reasons for this, like more people in their 20s living with their parents than in previous generations. And how many times do you think that this article references internet pornography? Go ahead, just take a wild guess. How many times total do you think it brings it up?
Not this time. It never happened.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't bring it up a single time. And it doesn't bring up how sexual media is a significant factor in having less sex, like Doyle implies here, either. It is almost exclusively talking about how changes in lifestyle and changes in economics have caused people to be in less relationships and thus have less sex. Porn isn't mentioned at all. The second source he does name, the mass media are an important context for adolescent sexual behavior, and it doesn't mention pornography either. Because while the study was published in 2006, the survey that it includes started in 2001, and the media it refers to doesn't mention the internet. Instead, it's talking about radios, CD players, VHS tapes, and 8-track players. This could be a decent source for some of Doyle's points, but the video's about internet pornography, and neither of these sources have anything to do with it. They don't even mention it once. Don't believe me? Check the sources in the description. Doyle didn't link them, but I did, and I had to go find them too. You know, side note, when a popular channel like Doyle's that has a lot of time to do research doesn't list its sources, and it also misrepresents them as much as Doyle's doing here, it really makes him look more dishonest than incompetent. Generally, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt with this kind of thing, you know? Research is hard and everyone makes mistakes, but misrepresenting these articles to claim that they have something to do with internet pornography is just... I don't believe it. It makes it really hard to think that he's doing anything aside from just completely lying about what he's talking about. Even though his points don't make much sense, he has a lot of people agreeing with him.
Oh man, it's gonna be a big yikes from me, dog.
And I think I know why. Despite having badly sourced opinions, John's a solid orator, I think he gets a lot of his techniques from Ben Shapiro, actually. Both of them talk so fast and give so many points so quickly that you can't really absorb what they're saying just by listening casually.
So if we didn't have this widespread, unlimited access to pornography, I guarantee you there would be no furries. I guarantee you that if instead of sitting inside watching porn, these people were out riding bikes, playing kickball, their sexuality would have developed normally. But because...
It's 2019, and I think most people have heard about TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists. You know, these fanatics like Germaine Greer who call trans women it and think trans men are lost lesbian sisters.
I think some of us have this image of being arrested where it's a gentle knock on the door and they say, "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Thorne. We've just seen some of your tweets from 2007.
In addition to Doyle's fast speech, you can also count how many frames he leaves sources on screen on one hand. This particular one's about 4 seconds. None of the other ones are much longer. Now, this is an example of some of the worst sourcing I've ever seen. Instead of weaving studies and articles into what he's talking about, he just slaps a screenshot in post that's barely on screen long enough to see it, let alone read it. And before you ask, no, there are no links to his sources in the description whatsoever. Because of this, I can't verify a bunch of his claims or figure out where he gets his ideas. Is it because I just can't find them? Were the articles moved, or were their names changed? Were they redacted? Were they wrong? I don't know. This is why we source things, because John could very well be right on a lot of points that I disagree with, but because I can't verify it, and so many of his other points are just unsourced nonsense, it just makes it all seem like BS. Why would I trust some of his points that I don't believe when they're surrounded by... You know what, I'll get to what these points are surrounded by in a second. So, what's his message? What does John exactly want to do here? Well, you can guess what John wants from the title of the video, but let me let him describe it in his own words.
And that's why I want it banned. I want it gone. That's right. I know what you're thinking. But John, the liberals, they want to ban stuff. I don't care. Ban it. Get it out of here. Oh, but John, you can never ban something. It just creates a black market. Sure. But you have to understand the lengths to which people will go to access something are normally distributed. So if we regulate pornography in the same class that we regulate child pornography, you won't be able to just access it in the blink of an eye. And if you don't recognize the difference between pulling out your phone and using Google to find it versus having to venture into the bowels of the dark web and risk prosecution, I don't know what to tell you.
So, you heard that right. He wants to ban all porn completely and make it just as illegal as cheese pizza. To start with, this is completely impossible. Just straight up impossible. Reason number one, you folks on YouTube may have heard of a little service called a VPN.
ExpressVPN!
Thank you very much to NordVPN for sponsoring this video.
You're right, man. I'm gonna need a little bit of help from my sponsor, ExpressVPN!
NordVPN. Remember to check out StrongVPN. Links in the description.
This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN.
And it's with ExpressVPN.
You may have heard of them or seen an ad for them once or twice. But yeah, these services are a pretty standard part of web security, and there's an entire industry based around them. And I was gonna have a segment where I explain kind of how they work, but I have so many ads that I can just have Dankula do that for me.
NordVPN allows you to bypass internet censorship if you're living in places like China and Saudi Arabia. It can also help you bypass the internet censorship caused by Article 13. Also, you can access content that's not available in your country. For example, the documentary that this video is about, you can only access it on the BBC website if you're from the UK. But with NordVPN, you can fix that.
Thanks, Dankula. These VPNs are built to get around web security and web censorship that countries put in. As a feature, that's part of what they do. And because this industry of VPNs is so vast and easy to get, John Doyle would either need to also outlaw all of these, which would, then you're getting into like a ton of legislation regarding what you can do with computer security, or the web security that he's intending to implement would have to be more restrictive than a country like China's. We would have to have stronger and more aggressive internet censorship than one of the most authoritarian countries ever. And if Uncle Sam is going to be cracking down on internet freedoms that hard, is porn really going to be the only thing restricted? Of course not, and you know it. In fact, if John got what he wanted, I wouldn't be surprised if political commentators that strayed from mainstream narratives were to be the first to get the axe after porn. Pretty ironic. Well, at this point I'm just kind of speculating, but you get my point. Handing that much control over internet freedoms to the government, it's not good. It's not good at all if you want to have any kind of freedom. Listen, America is called the land of the free, not the land of tyrannical control over your internet usage. So I'll just say to John's little plan, heck off, commie. Obviously, Doyle's plan is not thought through at all. He just wanted to ban it, and he didn't think of how it would work. Because he doesn't list any plan for how it would get banned. He just says he wants it banned, and that's kind of the end of it. But why does he feel this way? What drove him to this conclusion? What is so terrible that John is willing to forsake so much of our freedoms to get rid of this one thing?
But even all that aside, the most compelling reason I think to be against pornography is because it is a weapon that is used to control you. Do you think it's a coincidence that no one talks about the unprecedented and unlimited access that our society has to pornography? Do you think it's a coincidence that our media promotes hardcore and softcore pornography in our music, on our TV shows, and our movies? Do you think it's a coincidence that our kids are learning in school that hookup culture is normal and in fact it's actually empowering? It's not. It's a plan to control you, because if you have no control over your sexual desire, what will happen, and what does happen as we've discussed, is it will harm the family. It will harm your family, and on a broader scale, on a societal scale, it will harm the family. And so why do they want to harm the family? Well, because as Karl Marx said, if you can abolish the family, you can make people completely dependent. If you can abolish and dismantle the family structure, you can make people dependent on the state. That's the first part. The second part is that in our human pursuit of virtue and truth, we basically have a diametric that dictates that we can either conform truth to desire or desire to truth. And there are varying degrees throughout the spectrum, but you know, the rules of the extremes are constant. We can either conform truth to desire or desire to truth. And what that means is that if you can make people a slave to their desires, and of course sexual desire being most powerful.
I kind of cut around this clip a bit, and because it's really rambly. He goes on about like Marxism and the family, and he's just all over the place, and it's really hard to follow, so I tried to cut around the more rambly bits. And yeah, he thinks that this nebulous group of them, whoever that is, wants to control you and destroy the family because Marxism. Before you ask, no, he doesn't say who them is in this video, and it really gives him an air of a conspiracy theorist. He lists other problems as well, but this is definitely the core of what he believes. It's even his thumbnail, and it's just not convincing. How is a rambling, incoherent conspiracy theory about Marx and some nebulous boogeyman who wants to control your life, that this isn't convincing? No, he doesn't have sources for any of this either. It's just rambling. But I will give him credit for one thing. There is one point in here that's really good. And let me show it to you real quick.
Now, there's an undeniable link between the pornography industry and the sex trafficking industry. Police in my state of Michigan found that pornography is used or imitated in over 40% of sex crimes. The industry is filled with STDs, mental illness, targeting children, violence, exploitation. It's just a very dark, depraved industry, like as we would expect, but still. And it trickles down into child porn too. These mainstream websites get in trouble all the time because somehow, some way, videos of minors keep popping up. It's totally disgusting.
This is John's strongest point because it's true. At least partially so. Not all, pornographic companies are like this, but there are definitely companies that are fronts for kidnapping, trafficking, and some that are just straight up abusive. And frankly, this should be the core of his argument. It's the most emotionally powerful. It's accurate. It's easily provable. You can get sources about this easily. There's tons of lawsuits going out. Pornhub had to axe like millions of videos that weren't verified because they kept getting, there were so many illegal ones that they just panicked and mass deleted a bunch of their stuff. But this is not the core of John's argument. Instead, it's a footnote in a long line of conspiracy theory drivel. Why? Even from a pragmatic perspective, using this argument against the woke libs or whoever is incredibly effective. If you're talking to a sex-negative feminist, they already agree with you. Just straight up. They believe all of this. And if you're talking to, a socialist that thinks that sex work is real work, then you're like, hey, these workers are being abused. What do you think about that? They'd have to take your side. They would have to, even if they wouldn't grant you banning porn, they would agree that, this should be looked into. This should be investigated. We should shut down a lot of these industries, or do something. You could get somewhere with them. They would at least have to meet you halfway. It's a win-win. You either get them on your side, or you have to get them to admit that they don't care about what they care about. Either way, you win. But honestly, John doesn't care about that. John doesn't care about these women. John doesn't give a fuck about sex trafficking. He doesn't give a fuck about any of this. It's just a footnote. It's just a thing he can throw in because he thought it sounded good. He thought it added some emotional weight to his long ramble. And that was it. That's all there was to it. There's plenty more I could go over. Because like I said, John talks really fast. And this is like a 20-minute video, but it would take hours to go over every little thing he mentioned and every little thing he got wrong. And yeah, I'm just gonna call it here. Feel free to post constructive criticism in the comments. And you have a good one, guys.